Hello everyone. Today we're going to learn some details of the importance of financial monitoring. Also, I would like to inform you about the presentation shortly. In this presentation, we will outline the importance of financial control and budget monitoring. And the second aim of this presentation is considering the procedures and processes for financial control. And the third aim of this presentation is seeing how financial control can secure value for money. The fourth one is outline the procedures for financial reporting and budget monitoring. And the last one is explaining the purposes of processes of an audit. Let's have a look at the first title. It's called Financial Control and Monitoring. Does it matter that there is a gap between what was planned for a budget and the reality of the budget when it is implemented? Most management authorities consider that there will be some variation because the budget is essentially forecast at least a few months before implementation, and revenues and costs are subject, meanwhile, to change. However, the difference between what is intended and what actually transpires should be investigated and explained. In this way, mismanagement can be controlled and steps taken to try to make the budget a more realistic document to assess planning, implementation, and review in future years. This is not just at one level. In strategic terms, there will be concerns as to whether the budget as planned has been effective in securing the aims and objectives of the school or college. This may be judged variously, but requires consideration of whether value for money, efficiency, and effectiveness have been achieved through resource use. In management terms, the same questions are required of each of the major spending departments. The budget also exists at a functional level, operational control to ensure financial control and monitoring that all the elements within the organization work within an overall plan and do not make purchasing decisions at any level that would inhibit organizational effectiveness. Okay, let's have a look at the fifth presentation. As its simplest and as part of operational control, there may be concerns that the financial resources have been misappropriated either by accident or design. If there is a concern for probity of the system, it may be that the system requires tightening. The public press is always ready to share the horror reports of misappropriated funds. There are two elements to financial control. Although the phrase monitoring and evaluation is used fairly readily, it's important to distinguish between the two. Monitoring is a more limited activity than the evaluation and involves checking that what was planned has actually occurred. Evaluation is a broader and more demanding activity that requires judgments to be made about the value of resource expenditure and of the activities to the organization or other stakeholders. Let's have a look at the term monitoring in the budget. This is undertaken through regular checks of the intended expenditure at a stage in the year under any subjective heading and the actual expenditure at that time. In order to monitor properly, it's first necessary to profile the budget. Profiling means entering commitments to spend in each month as they are likely to occur. Hence, heating costs will be larger in winter than in summer, whereas the salary bill will be anticipated to be the same per month until the months when annual increments are due. Having undertaken a proper profile, it's possible to examine discrepancies between planned and actual expenditure, where the latter includes commitments to spend. Where discrepancies occur, they may be due to incorrect posting of payments by wrongly entering data, a mismatch between order and payment, so that the payment is posted to a later period or to the wrong budget code, a failure to order in accordance with the budget, and an overspend related to cost increases or purchasing greater quantities than planned. The answer to the question of the mismatch is indicative of the need for tighter management of the budget. There is an increasing amount of supportive data that can help schools and colleges to understand fluctuations shown in monitoring. These include the use of spreadsheets or commercial programs to date orders, amounts, invoice total, and payment dates, monitoring cash collection and banking procedures, tracking the progress of budgetary intentions, for example, in staff advertising, nothing over the underuse of resources to overcome waste, and the use of unit costing for comparable outcomes. For example, does one examination pass in history more or less than one in geography? The concept of economy can be relevant to financial monitoring and used as a management control because it is about making sure that the purchasing and use of resources is done at least cost, ideally for given quality. Despite the best of intentions, this can go wrong. Let's have a look at the title in detail. Uh, Procedures and processes for financial control. As we have already said, financial control is essential to ensure that there is no mismanagement of resources. This requires probity, a combination of transparency and administrative practice that can track how and where resources have been used. Whatever the criteria for the relationship between resources and outcomes, there is a requirement that the funds are managed in the right way. Operational financial management is concerned with ensuring that money allocated in the budget is properly spent on authorized purchases. It also endeavors to monitor the implementation of spending plans according to the budget or with good reason as a deviation from the budget. Okay, financial control is shown in the following areas of the administration: purchasing goods and contracting services, banking funds paid into by the school or college, managing the payroll for all employees, security of assets, maintaining petty cash accounts, maintaining voluntary funds, insurance matters, increasingly ensuring data security to prevent the misuse of information. One method of financial control used by some education authorities is to make it impossible or difficult to change the amount spent in the course of the year in each budget line from the amount planned in the school budget at the beginning of the financial year. The ability to switch money from one budget line, for example, for heating, to another, say, stationery, is called wirement. While forbidding wirement enhances control, it does so at the expense of efficiency and effectiveness. So, if a school ends up spending less than originally planned on heating, it cannot switch the savings to spend more on, say, stationery. In some systems, the unspent money is returned to the founding authority, as noted in field notes following research in Azerbaijan. In the Pakistani province of Punjab, environment is permitted but requires authorization by the assistant education officer after a quarterly monitoring meeting and the submission of a revised school-based action plan. In contrast, in England, schools are free to fire money from one budget line to another within the total of the budget planned expenditure. What is petty cash? Let's learn what petty cash means. Sometimes it is simpler to make small purchases with petty cash, the fund from which minor payments are made to teaching and administrative staff. Guidance points to the need for a robust control system because petty cash is a portable and attractive asset and subject to fraudulent misuse. Fraud is not, however, the only risk associated with petty cash. The major potential risks associated with the use of petty cash are that normal payment procedures may be bypassed, duplicate payments may be made, its use for cashing of personal checks, it may be stolen. Key controls should therefore be in place covering the authorization of the use of petty cash, recording of petty cash transactions, secure storage of petty cash. As with other payments and transactions, those involving petty cash should be subject to the same principles of probity and accountability. One person should not be responsible for all aspects of administration of petty cash, such as authorization or usage, making payments, reconciliation of the petty cash account, etc. It's also important that the responsibilities and authorization limits of those with delegated responsibility. Financial control and monitoring for the petty cash account are clear and known by all school staff. In order to overcome potential problems with all financial practices, auditors suggest five essential principles. The first one, there should be a separation of powers within the system. The same person should not place the order for goods, check their arrival, and then arrange for payment. Neither should the same person collect and count cash and then be responsible for its banking or order reconciliation of the bank statement with the school account. Contracts with suppliers of goods and services should include full and rigorous specifications, require that tenders are submitted following open advertising, and be subject to monitoring and final approval before payment. Payments should only be made by authorized signatories, often requiring two signatures for payments over a stated amount, and only on the presentation of authenticated delivery notes for the goods or services provided. All sections of the school or college should maintain complete inventories of all stock when goods arrive in the department, which should be available for independent checking at all times. There should be firm guidelines for financial practice within school or college, including responsibilities, procedures, and the necessary record keeping for both official and unofficial funds. Securing value for money. While there are arguments that can be made for decentralization, there are also concerns that the quality of resources may be so variable that productive efficiency is compromised. Financial control offers a mechanism for securing value for money, despite all the efforts made by those responsible for financial administration. It's not always possible to ensure that resources are consistent in quality. Some educational organizations endeavor to overcome this. For physical resources, this is usually through centralized purchasing schemes. These have the great advantage that purchasing power of all schools combined is far greater than that of individual schools, and so items are cheaper to buy. Usually, the quality assurance requirements are more rigorously enforced through specialist purchasing offers, and competition between suppliers is such that they will strive to offer value for money for same goods. Some physical items cannot be centrally purchased because they are particularly to the school or college. Though it's possible to have centrally arranged contracts for services for several schools, these often offer the individual school insufficient control of the specification of the service. Such services include building repairs, grounds maintenance, and some aspects of catering provision. In order to ensure some consistency and to enable checking of purchasing, authorities usually require the use of contracts. These are advantageous in that they specify exactly what is to be provided by way of service and outline the criteria by which successful completion can be judged. They are usually competitive in that several suppliers may be approached by the purchasing authority, who will usually be bound to take the lowest tender for comparable services. They are usually supported by the technical experts from central administration. Few schools can claim to have a plumbing specialist on their staff. They do provide some legal support if there is any attempt by contractors to renege on a contractual retirement and teaches in that. Securing value for money in purchasing human resources is neither as objective nor as certain as that for physical resources. Despite all efforts, human beings are variable in nature and capacity. Most national systems require that schools or colleges should ensure consistent quality in human resources, no matter the degree of devolution. To achieve this, they are required to appoint only teaching staff who have followed a recognized and approved course of subject-specific and professional training. However, there is some variation in this. In those subjects areas where there are national shortages, professional training can be minimized or undertaken during the initial teaching experience or in a variation in acceptable professional training. For example, where any social service training is acceptable for special needs teaching. The greater the degree of decentralization, the more likely it is that there will be variation in the interpretation of national guidelines. This may lead to consideration of costs and some balance of these against potential effectiveness. Changes in the salary structures for England and Wales have led to allegations that schools are employing younger, less experienced teachers because they are less expensive than those who have considerable experience. Value for money for the large proportion of the budget spent on staff salaries and on costs is best assessed by consideration of the following issues that could affect the staffing budget. Staff cost as a proportion of total budget sum, average teacher cost, pupil to teacher ratio, class sizes, teacher contact ratio, proportional budget spent on leadership team, 3 to 5 year budget projections, spent per pupil on non-pay expenditure lines compared to similar schools, school improvement plan priorities and the relative cost of options, list of contracts with cost and renewal dates. Okay. The last part of this presentation is related to financial reporting. Regular monitoring of income and expenditure against the agreed budget is central to effective financial management. It allows the governors, the head teacher, and the staff to maintain financial control by reviewing the current position and taking any remedial action necessary. But budgets are not set in stone. The original budget may need regular updating following consultation with governors to take account of in-year developments. If this is done, it's important to retain a copy of the original budget to support future budget construction. Thank you for your listening.